3 months ago, Texas Governor Greg Abbott signed into law Bill SB 4 that allowed Texas state police to arrest and potentially deport or jail any migrants suspected of crossing into the U.S. illegally. The Supreme Court on Tuesday gave Texas the green light to enforce that law, but hours later, an appeals court for the second time put its implementation on pause to give itself more time to hear constitutional challenges from the DOJ and civil rights groups. To help us better understand how police and the courts would deal with enforcing such a law is Elizabeth Mendoza, a Houston-based immigration lawyer. I want to thank you so much, Elizabeth, for joining us now. What questions do migrants in your community have should the law eventually take effect?
Thank you, Lindsay. I appreciate being with you tonight. There's a lot of fear in the community. Right at the top of the list, the questions that we keep getting asked are, what do I say if I get stopped by a police officer? What documents do I show a police officer? What happens to my children who are in school if I'm detained while they are in school? So these are a persistent concern in the community because of this new law. It's palpable, the fear and the concern in the community.
If Texas State Police were allowed to arrest migrants, what recourse would migrants have in order to not be jailed or deported?
That's an excellent question, and I think that is still up in the air. I've read the law myself several times, and it seems to be very ambiguous. It seems like you can be arrested by local law enforcement. You could be sent before a judge. There's apparently no kind of wiggle room for there to be time taken to determine somebody's status in the country. If the person doesn't agree to a state deportation, that in and of itself is another violation of this new law. And then you could wind up being state deported, where you're taken to the Texas-Mexico border and basically told, step out of the United States.
Yeah. A lot of people seem hesitant about it on both sides. But just yesterday here on Prime, we spoke to a commander with the El Paso County Sheriff's Office who said enforcement of the law would be problematic. What headaches could the law create for both police as well as the courts?
Well, two things. I've heard several proponents of the law posit, well, this law is only going to be enforced along the border. But there's no language in the law that limits the enforcement geographically. So this law could be enforced, 5 feet inside or, the state of Texas or in one of our northern cities almost 1,000 miles away from the border. And then apart from that, there's this ambiguity about, well, why would a police officer have some kind of reasonable suspicion that you may have violated this law? And so that's where the racial profiling element comes into this. And so these are some of the problems that we have with this law and how it could possibly be enforced.
And I have a question really about that enforcement, because you have federal prosecutors who are arguing that this is a matter for federal authorities, not state authorities. Do you think that they have a point?
Absolutely. I mean, local law enforcement are not federal agents. They're not trained in federal immigration law. So I don't see how they are going to get the training or the training or guidance that they will need to help them try and enforce this law.
But of course, it is quite possible that the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals and Supreme Court rule the law or parts of the law are constitutional. What's the timeline here?
That's a good question. Our governor fast-tracked this law. I don't know if we would maybe get a decision. Usually we get our Supreme Court decisions by the latest May or June of each year. So I don't know if we'll get something before that. Perhaps just the awareness that there's so much fear and public pressure regarding this issue may kind of nudge the courts to give us a decision before May or June. But I think we're going to be in for a couple of nail-biting months while we wait for this litigation to play out.
And as you say, the response has already been palpable there. Elizabeth Mendoza, we thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.